All right. Today is 335. We're staying consistent. No excuses. Today is my 5-year wedding anniversary, but we're still doing it. All right. We're still doing it. So today we're going to look at other 4 bedrooms around this area. Let's see. I looked up this property just in Hueytown, just outside of Birmingham. This is about southwest here. Okay. And this property, let's see. Let's check the condition of this property. This property is, I would say it's like cosmetic rehab. I mean, I would replace all the carpet. This looks pretty old. I would replace the appliances, but your cabinets still look okay. Now, because of how dated this property is, I'm still going to, I would probably just repaint the entire place for sure. I would repaint the entire place. I would redo all the flooring. This bathroom looks okay as long as you paint it. Maybe we'll just change up the vanity or something like that. Okay. This, what is this? Is it a garage? No, that's a storage shed. I'm not touching that. Not for a rental, at least. Okay. So this is a 4-bed, 1.5 bath. All right. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is let me look up the rent, Jefferson County. So we're going to Google HUD FMR, HUD FMR. We'll click on the link, and then we're going to do access to small area FMRs, and we'll look up FY 2025 FMRs. And now I'm going to go to Alabama, and I'm going to Jefferson County. And I'm going to look for 35023. And you're going to see right here that the rent ceiling for 35023 is $1,810. Wow, that's really high. I don't see $1,810 that often. $1,810. And my rent ceiling for a 3-bed is $1,600. So $1,800 is probably the highest I've seen it. So let's go ahead and see what my market rent looks like. To get my market rent, I'm going to go to affordablehousing.com. I'm going to the owner section, go to the market rent estimator. I'm going to plug in the address, Hueytown. I'm assuming that's also part of Bessemer. That's why it's bringing that up, 2810 Hueytown. And this is going to be in the 4-bedroom. And then this is $1,397. And then I'm going to put it in $1,397, and then I'll have 3-mile radius. All right, cool. So it tells me that for 25 units within a 2.96 mile radius, the average rent is $1,397. Okay, now with $1,397, what you're going to do is $1,450 for the zip, $1,638 for the city, and $1,940. Now, even though that the rent ceiling here says $1,810, the market rent is only at $1,400. Now, this rent ceiling typically includes things such as utilities, and if you're not paying utilities, you got to deduct the utility allowance from that number. Now, in this scenario, so the more reasonable rent is going to be using this $1,397 number and not the $1,810 because the market has not caught up to it. And if you want to know the legal definition, or not legal definition, but the rationale for that is because of this test called the rent reasonableness test. Now I'm opening up, this is the Housing Choice Voucher Program guidebook. Housing Choice Voucher is what was previously known as the Section 8 program. And if you go to this guidebook and you go to section 2.2, it says that in conducting rent reasonableness, the PHA, or the Public Housing Authority, they're the ones that kind of administers all the vouchers. They must determine whether the rent to the owner is a reasonable rent in comparison to rent for other comparable unassisted units. So obviously, in determining comparability, the PHA must consider the following factors where appropriate and practical. So obviously, size and unit type matters. But because I'm only looking at 4 bedrooms here, I have relatively high confidence that these 25 units are probably single-family homes, because otherwise, it's just not common for them to be building 4-bedroom apartments, right? Let me just make sure I'm on the chat here too. Sorry, I want to double check. Okay, and that's why we had to use the $1,397 number. So now that we got a few numbers in here, let's go ahead and plug in some numbers in. Well, we got $165,000 for the list price, which is listed right here. For my renovations, I'm gonna go to my rehab calculator right now, and I'm gonna set aside $1,500 for the roof because there's usually something wrong with the roof, some kind of patching that's needed. $500 for the landscaping. For this property, it is 1,260 square feet. So I need to assume that I need to repaint the entire place at $3 a square foot. I'm going to redo the flooring for the entire home at 1,260 square foot. 1,260 square feet at $8 a square foot. I am going to put in new, I'll probably just repaint the cabinets. I'll probably put in a new sink, so new range to make it look a little nicer. And then for my bathroom, I'm going to assume that I just need to replace the vanity countertop, vanity mirror. I'll probably replace this thing too. And I'll always replace both toilets with high pressure flush toilets. And maybe I'll replace this shower too, just to kind of make it look nicer, the shower stall. All right, so that gives me a few numbers here. And I'm assuming the HVAC is okay, right? Obviously, I'm going to get an inspection. I'm going to do that, but this is the quickest way for me to figure out whether or not it's going to be worth my time. Okay. So this gives me a total rehab of 28,812. Okay. I'm going to delete this because previously it was multiplying by 5 from the last scenario I did yesterday night. So when I delete that asterisk 5, to multiply by 5, this gets me back to the number that I just calculate, which is about 28 grand. All right. So I feel pretty good about 28 grand. I mean, it's a pretty heavy rehab, but it's a more dated home, right? So I got $1,397 for my rent. For my taxes, let's go ahead and look up taxes. This is $65 on the property taxes. That's pretty low, actually, on a ratio standpoint. And then we got $128 for insurance. I'm going to do equals 128 times 1.2 because I'm adding a 20% premium to the insurance numbers simply because I anticipate that the property is going to be more expensive to insure once you turn it into an investment property. So that's why I multiply 1.2. Okay. Now, then I got 10% for my maintenance. I got 10% for the property management, and then I also got 5% for the vacancy. So that gives me all my numbers right here. And the next thing I would need to do is calculate my down payment, which I put as 25% in F19. I'm going to do equals to my B4 times my F19, which is my down payment percentage. So I know I'm paying down $41,250 in my down payment. I got 2% for my closing costs, and I got 28 grand, 29 grand for my renovations, right? That I calculated earlier. So for my finance amount in case 6, that's going to be equals to my asking price in B4 minus my selling price. My down payment in E19. And I'm going to put this as 8% interest rate. So I'm going to assume that this is what I'm financing for $123,750 because I'm putting down down payment of $41,250. Okay. Now that all results in a whopping, right? Assuming I rent it out for $1,397, I'll be losing negative $79 a month, but my cash on cash return is negative 1.3%, negative 1.3. And that's assuming my purchase price was $165,000 with a rehab of $29,000, just rounding here for easy numbers. So for you to think about it, right? The exercise we want to go through now is figuring out how do we turn something that isn't a deal into a deal, right? Obviously, this is not investment advice. We're not soliciting any investments on this call. We're simply showing you the process, the work to take emotions out of looking at a deal sometimes. Obviously, your own circumstances are going to be very different. So watch what happens to my cash and cash return in E9 as I lower this asking price to, let's say, 90 grand. Boom, 7.5, 85 grand, $80,000, 75 grand. And that's the only way it can become a deal because of how much money I'm spending up front, assuming I'm using money out of my pocket of $29,000. So at $1,397, that's what I'm able to rent it out still for as a 4-bedroom, I will be cash flowing $416 a month. That would be a 10.2% return. And that assumes I bought the property at 75 grand. Right. So everything else stayed constant. My down payment went the same, but my purchase price went down to 75 grand, hence lowering the amount I'm putting down and hence lowering the amount I'm financing. Okay. Now, sometimes you might not even have lenders that will lend you on a property for that little money, or they might charge you a ton more in closing costs. It might be 2.5%, 3% even. So just be really, really wary about your circumstances and make sure that you're talking to lenders in advance before you're underwriting these deals, so you know what you're getting quoted at for down payment percentage expectations and also interest rates. Okay, now, what if my interest rate dropped to 7%, right? Now all of a sudden my cash on cash return just jumped to the whole point. So now instead of paying 75 grand, if I increase my B4, how much can I increase my asking price by, which is the price I'm purchasing, before I go below 10%? So if I go to 80 grand, 81,000, there you go. I'm still at 10%. But now instead of paying 75 grand, I'm now willing to pay $81,000 simply because the interest rate dropped 1 percentage point from 8% to 7% in that scenario. And that's what I want to go through with all of you today, so you can understand what is the interest rate implications, right? We hear on the news right now, okay, the Fed Reserve is getting ready to drop the interest rates. Well, what does that mean? This is what it means. When you're able to tease apart what you're willing to pay for a property due to a change in the interest rate, that's how you determine what's the effect on your strategy, okay? Now you know, hey, if I see another property for 75 grand, but it requires a rehab of roughly 30 grand, and my interest rate I'm borrowing at 8%, well, that's how much I'm willing to pay for the property. If interest rates go down by 7%, then I'm willing to pay for a similar property, assuming everything else stayed constant, right? Rent stayed the same, the rehab stayed the same. I'm willing to pay 81 grand. So obviously, as other factors change, you can lower it, right? Meaning if you get an insurance quote that gets a little bit more accurate, that might be more expensive, you have to lower your thing accordingly. But if you get a really super cheap insurance quote and now all of a sudden it makes sense, well, now you might be willing to pay more, right? So all these factors matter, and that's why it's so worth it for you all to get a copy of the spreadsheet and practice on your own. So you guys want to copy the spreadsheet, just go to affordablehousing.io, go to the Get Deal Analysis tool, and put in your name, your email, your phone number, and that's the fastest way to get a copy of the spreadsheet. I didn't make this spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few other folks. I combined it and modified it based on my own experience. Obviously, these repairs are going to be very different by market, right? Very different. You might be up in the mountains. They might charge you 3 times more, right? It's just so different in every single market. So don't assume those numbers are what they are. They're just meant to be a general guidance for you to estimate some of the rehabs. But at the end of the day, you're going to have a contractor walk the property, and chances are you're going to have to pay the contractor to give you a bid on that deal to compensate them for their time. So I hope you all have an amazing Friday. I hope you guys spend some quality time with your family and friends today, because that's what life is all about. All right. Keep it up with me. Put it on your own YouTube channel. Put in the reps. Do the work. And I'll see you back tomorrow for day 336. Have a good one, everybody.